事務委員會
Members, it's the appointed time and we have a quorum. I call to order the meeting. Agenda item 1, information papers issued since the last meeting. Members, please note that since the last meeting, the Secretariat issued 2 papers to members. They are LC paper number CB bracket 3849/2025 bracket 1. It's the MTRC's paper on MTR fares for 2025. The second paper, LC paper number CB bracket 3850/2025 bracket 01, is the MTRC's paper on 2025 fare adjustment for Airport Express. They are set out on the agenda. Please note. Agenda item 2, items for discussion at the next meeting. The details are set out on the agenda. We have the list of outstanding items for discussion, that's LC paper number CB bracket 3941/2025 bracket 01, and a list of follow-up actions, that's LC paper number CB bracket 3941/2025 bracket 02. The next regular meeting will be held at 10:45 a.m. on the 18th of July. It's a Friday. The government suggests discussing the following 2 items. 1. Enhancing licensing arrangements and facilitation measures for road-based cross-boundary travel, and 2. The facilitation measures. Do members have any views? If not, these are the items that we're going to discuss in the next meeting. Agenda item 3, review of tunnel tolls. I'll invite the Transport and Logistics Bureau and the other government representatives to join us first. We have a paper provided by the administration, that's LC paper number CB bracket 3941/2025 bracket 03, and a background brief prepared by LegCo Secretariat. That's LC paper number CB bracket 3956/2025 bracket 01. Dr. Simon Lee issued a letter on the 18th of June 2025. Please refer to LC paper number CB bracket 3985/2025 bracket 01. We also have 2 submissions, one from a public light bus association and another from an individual. The 2 papers were issued to members before the meeting. Let's welcome representatives from the TLB. We have Ms. Mabel Chen, Secretary. We also have Mr. Edward Mack, Deputy Secretary for Transport and Logistics. Ms. Angela Lee, Commissioner for Transport. So we have representatives also from the Transport Department and the Highways Department. Members who would like to ask questions, please press the Request to Speak button. 12 members have asked to speak. I'll read out their names later. Now I'd like to invite Ms. Mabel Chen, Secretary for Transport and Logistics, to walk us through the paper. Secretary, please. Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. I believe you're all concerned about this topic today. I'd like to say a few words first. Afterwards, I will invite colleagues from the Transport Department to give a PowerPoint presentation. They will brief members on the results of our review. The 2025 and 26 budget mentioned that there will be a review of tunnel tolls, and today we're briefing members on the outcome of the review. We'd like to also take the opportunity to tell members about our review on the effectiveness of the time-varying tolls on the 3 road harbour crossings. On the review of government tunnels as well as major trunk roads, we have studied the situation with the 3 road harbor crossings as well as the Thailand tunnel, and we've heard views from members as well as the community. That is, we need a consistent and comprehensive principle on charging tolls for government tunnels and trunk roads so that we can have a clear direction. Simply put, we have 4 major principles. That's traffic management needs, public transport first, efficiency first, as well as user pays. We also will carefully consider the public affordability. Now, based on these 4 major principles, we are according priority to our review on analyzing the toll levels of different tunnels. We have taken into consideration the weight of the 4 principles. We are putting forward some proposals today. We suggest adjusting the toll levels of Aberdeen Tunnel as well as the Shingmun Tunnel. Also, we are going to charge appropriate tolls for the Central Kowloon route. We will abide by the users pay principle as well as the traffic management needs principle. On Aberdeen Tunnel as well as Shingmun Tunnel, we have done some comparison. Compared with their alternative routes, these 2 tunnels are relatively shorter and provide more convenience. There are surplus capacities for the 2 tunnels to cope with additional traffic flow, and it's been 34 years since we last adjusted the tolls for these 2 tunnels, and we see an increase of maintenance cost for these 2 tunnels. Take 2024 and 25 as an example. The operating deficit for Aberdeen Tunnel reached $18 million, and for Shingmun Tunnel it's $52 million. If we impose an all-day uniform tolls on these 2 tunnels from $5 to $8, it will pose a minimal impact on the traffic management. We'll also be able to break even. So we think there is a need and there is room for us to first adjust the toll levels for these 2 tunnels. On the other hand, on the Central Kowloon bypass that's going to be commissioned soon, by the end of this year, we will commission the Yau Ma Tei tunnel section, and by the middle of next year, we hope to open up the Kowloon Bay tunnel section of the bypass. The Central Kowloon bypass is able to alleviate the congestion situation in major trunk roads in Kowloon. For example, from Kowloon Bay to Yau Ma Tei, the journey time will reduce from 30 minutes to 5 minutes after the bypass is commissioned. This is because it is short in length and it will help people save up fuel cost. We believe that it will be very appealing to users. We expect that after the opening up of the bypass, during peak hours it will near saturation. Therefore, in the paper, we have set out the 3 scenarios of toll charging so that we can have a discussion on them. First scenario, toll-free. Second scenario, a fixed toll of $17 so that we can break even. And third scenario, a fixed toll of $10. I'd like to explain more here about our assessment on traffic management. In 2017, the government was preparing for the public works of the Central Kowloon bypass, and back then we made an estimate of making it a toll-free bypass. During peak hours, the VC ratio would reach 0.9. According to the latest manpower projection for 2026, around Central Kowloon bypass, including Kowloon East, Tseung Kwan O, the total population will increase by 6% compared to our estimate made before. And for the east-west road travel in Kowloon, the VC ratio will also increase by 15% compared to our previous estimate. So we believe that the traffic flow around the bypass will be higher than expected. It will reach 0.97 during peak hours. That means after the bypass is commissioned during peak hours, we will see close to saturation. Therefore, from a traffic management perspective, we'll have to reassess how we should charge our tolls. We will have to leave some room for charging tolls. Under the $10 scenario, the VC ratio or the capacity will reach 80%, and this is a healthier situation. Since 2023, we have implemented HKE toll, and we've been making use of technology. So we will be able to, in urban areas, for example, in areas around the central Kowloon bypass, there will not be room for toll booths. And this is a kind of flexibility offered by technology. So there will be more room and flexibility through effective traffic management measures, including charging tolls. Will be able to better manage the traffic. We have devoted a lot of resources in building the central Kowloon bypass. In terms of operating the bypass and maintaining it, the cost will be higher than that for other roads because it's 8 kilometers in length and 7 kilometers are tunnel for the ventilation building as well as lighting installations as well as traffic management signal system. The maintenance cost will be higher than those for other tunnels. Under the $10 scenario, we'll be able to recover 90% of the basic operating cost. So we think that charging an appropriate level of tolls for the bypass will be able to reserve about 20% of surplus capacity as buffer room to cope with growth in traffic flow. Will also be able to divert about 20% of the traffic from busy trunk roads in Kowloon Central. Also, taking into consideration public affordability, we believe we will be able to cover the cost. The $10 scenario is a balance struck under the four major principles. We want to adopt a reasonable and compassionate approach. For each scenario proposed, there will be further elaborations from my colleagues. I'm not going to go into the details here. In terms of other tunnels as well as major trunk roads, again, we abide by the four major principles and review each tunnel and major trunk road. The paper sets out all our considerations. Simply put, for each set of tunnels as well as major trunk roads, we hope that there will be more comprehensive transport supporting facilities. For example, we hope that there will be new alternative routes and there will be more mature traffic management system. But before we're able to achieve that, we propose to keep the existing arrangement and we will conduct relevant reviews in due course. In terms of the legislative timetable for the toll charging, we hope that there can be a full discussion at this meeting today. We strive to, within this legislative session, introduce the subsidiary legislation amendment for Aberdeen Tunnel as well as the Shingmun Tunnel. We believe that after the completion of the scrutiny, we'll be able to have the new tolls take into effect within a month after the scrutiny. As for the Central Kowloon bypass, we strive to, by the middle of 2026, impose the new tolls in tandem with the commissioning. Now, I'd also like to talk about our reviews on the 3 road harbor crossings. Since December 2023, we have implemented time-varying tolls in the 3 RCHs. And this is to suppress and divert traffic during peak hours. We want to make good use of the capacity of the 3 road harbor crossings. After we've implemented the time-varying tolls, we've seen congestion alleviated, and for roads around tunnel portals, we've also seen improvement. We've achieved our policy objectives. Take the Western Harbour Crossing as an example. We've seen 19% increase of traffic flow, which reads about 104,000 vehicular trips. And for cross-harbor tunnel, we've seen a reduction of 9% in terms of traffic flow. We've seen about 96,000 vehicular trips a day. And also for Eastern Harbor Crossing, the road traffic has reduced by 7%. We've seen 73,000 vehicular trips per day. For cross-harbor tunnel, we have seen a reduction of 1 kilometer in terms of traffic queue during peak hours, and East Harbor Crossing 0.5 kilometers and West Harbor Crossing 0.4 kilometers. We see effective diversion effect. During peak hours at the Western Harbor Crossing, we have seen greater traffic flow, and we are able to rationalize traffic at the exit of Western Harbor Crossing. So we're now working on adding an additional traffic lane at the Western Harbor Crossing. We hope that after completing the works, we'll be able to make the southbound traffic smoother. And we see great diversion effect, and we've seen growth in traffic flow around the Western Harbor Crossing. So we need hardware improvement. We have made a review, and we propose to retain the toll levels during peak hours so that we will continue to monitor the traffic situation, and we will make adjustments appropriately. Now I'd like to invite colleagues from the Transport Department to give you a PowerPoint presentation. We hope to have some interactions and discussions with members. We hope to address members' questions as well. Thank you.
Guy.
Thank you, Secretary, for the introduction. Now, for housekeeping, let me remind members that since we're all very keen about this topic, I'd like to give more time for the interaction section. Now, Mr. Mack, you've prepared a PowerPoint presentation, but try to deliver it as succinctly as possible. If the presentation overlaps with the document, then why don't you just skip it and just give us some salient points. I hope you'll be able to complete the presentation in 3 minutes. Who would like to lead the presentation? Mr. Lang? Well, it'll be very quick. I'll just go through a dozen slides. I'd like to go through the paper with the members. First, I would like to reiterate the 4 key principles. The first is about traffic management needs. The purpose is to improve traffic flow, so this is of paramount importance. Now, the second principle we consider is that for larger vehicles such as buses and lorries, we charge higher tolls because of the space they occupy. But after redistributing cross-harbor traffic across the tunnels, we have rationalized the tolls, and that for larger vehicles, they now enjoy a greater concession. And that is according to the principle of giving priority to efficiency. The last point is about user pay principle. Now, we need to be able to achieve financial sustainability, and that is why we need to charge reasonable tolls. We go by these 4 key principles in considering the tolls so as to strike a balance. Right, Mr. Leung, I know these are 4 important principles, so I've allowed you to go on. But for the rest of the paper, just give us the highlights, because I want to save time for the Q&A session. Right, let's take a look at this slide. Be it the Shingmun Tunnel or the Aberdeen Tunnel, we're running into deficits. There is a need to adjust the tolls to achieve fiscal balance. Now, in this table, you will see the Route 8 Kowloon section, including the Eagle Nest Tunnel. The deficit figure is the most apparent, and we need to recover costs. But as I mentioned, we have another important principle, that is traffic management. Now, adjusting the tolls for Route 8 will mean that traffic will be rediverted to use Lion Rock Tunnel. So this is not desirable. As for the rest of the presentation, I will ask members to refer to the paper. Now we will now focus on the proposed tunnel toll adjustments. For Aberdeen Tunnel, in 2023-24, we ran into a deficit, and the situation will continue until 2027-28. Now, if we adjust the tunnel tolls to $8, we'll be able to achieve fiscal balance. And for the alternative route along Luang Nai Chong Gap Road, there is still spare capacity. So this is a feasible option. For Shing Mun Tunnel, likewise, the current toll of $5 have caused us to run into a deficit. We propose to increase the tolls to $8, and there is capacity for the alternative routes, including the Eagle Nest Tunnel or Taipo Road. The last part is about the Central Kowloon bypass. Now let's take a look at this slide. We can compare and contrast the bypass and the alternative routes. From Yau Ma Tei and Kowloon Bay section, we see the construction of Central Kowloon route and T2. That's part of Route 6. And the alternative route refers to Long Chang Road, Argyle Street, Boundary Street, and Prince Edward Road, West Waterloo Road, Gascoigne Road. Now, this alternative route is convoluted with bends, whereas the Central Kowloon bypass presents a much quicker alternative as the journey is much shorter without bends. Next, I'd like to talk about the connecting roads. There are three major interchanges, one in Kowloon West in Yau Ma Tei and the other in Kowloon East, Kowloon Bay. There will also be an interchange and connection with Cheung Kwan O Lam Tin Tunnel in Yau Tong, leading to Cheung Kwan O. So it's a major transport corridor with heavy traffic flow anticipated. The Yau Ma Tei section will be commissioned in the end of this year. For Kowloon Bay, it will be commissioned in the end of 2026. And by then, we will impose tolls. And we believe this is an appropriate juncture to talk about tolls. Next, I will go through the different scenarios and the financial implications. Now, the construction cost is about 58 billion with an annual maintenance cost of $1.1 billion. We need to impose appropriate levels of toll for Central Kowloon bypass to ensure financial sustainability. Now, for the first scenario, if we do not charge any toll, then in 2026, when the whole bypass is commissioned, we will reach saturation during peak hours with a VC ratio of 0.97. We do not have spare capacity to cope with increased flow, and all the operating costs will be supported by public coffers, and this is not desirable. Now, for scenario 2, we propose to charge $17 for the tolls. We anticipate that $300 million of revenue will be generated, but this only covers part of the $1.1 billion operating cost. And then the utilization rate is about 60%, and we're not unleashing the full potential of the 3-lane bypass. And it is not fulfilling its function of traffic diversion. As for scenario 3, we propose to charge $10. It is expected that the peak hour flow VC will reach 0.9, and that means we can divert 20% of traffic going from east to west in Kowloon. This can help with traffic diversion. There will be major improvements at locations such as Waterloo Road and Boundary Street, flyover, etc. And we will be able to recoup about 90% of operating costs. So the third scenario is the best option in terms of cost recovery and traffic diversion. And in order to introduce tolls for Central Kowloon bypass, we propose to set up the toll charging points at the location shown on the slide. This is the part that will be passed by all traffic using the bypass, be it Kowloon Bay section or Yau Ma Tei section, because Kai Tak represents the entrance or exits of both sections. So in terms of the construction works, they will be dovetailed with the construction of the Central Kowloon route. Legislative timetable. We propose to table the subsidiary legislation amendments in the second half of 2025. And then for Shing Mun and Aberdeen Tunnel, the new tolls will come into effect in the second half of 2025. And when the Central Kowloon bypass is fully commissioned, we will charge tolls starting from 2026. And about time varying tolls for cross harbour tunnels. Since December 2023, we have been monitoring the situation. According to our data, in 2024, there was overall improvement for cross harbour traffic. Now, there was more even distribution of traffic across the 3 harbour tunnels. So we were able to meet the policy objective. During peak hours, the tailback at the CHT and EHC was shortened by 1 kilometer and 0.5 kilometer. And after traffic redistribution, the overall demand of the 3 cross-harbour tunnels still exceeded the total capacity. Now the demand dropped from 126% in 2021 to 120% in 2024, and in the first quarter the overall traffic flow increased by about 2%, and we do envisage further growth. At the moment, there are road widening works at the Hong Kong Island portal of Western Harbour Crossing. This will be completed in the first quarter of 2026. Together with road widening works at the toll plaza, traffic flow will improve. Right, thank you, Mr. Leung, for talking 19 to the dozen and going through this presentation with us. So I believe with the paper in hand and with Mr. Leung's presentation, members will have a full grasp of the situation. So the floor is now open. I see that many members would like to ask questions. We have 20 members waiting in line. Let me read out the names of members in the order of speaking. And I'd also like to remind members that this item is a livelihood issue close to the heart of members. It involves a number of tunnels and roads. So let's keep your speech to just 4 minutes, questions and answer. Now, for the sake of time management, I think that this item won't be completed until after 12 noon. So for better housekeeping, perhaps we will just focus on this item today and leave the next item, which is about smart transport, to the next meeting. So depending on our progress, we may start the next item and extend the meeting. Let me read out the names of members in this order: Dominic Lee, Bill Tang, Michael Look, Chen Pui Leung, Starry Lee, Connie Lam, Charles Siu Chung, Chan Hock Fong, Vincent Chang, Edward Lau, Perry Yu, Deputy Chair, Frankie Yik, Kenneth Lau, Gary Zhang, Kitson Yang, Lemon Kwong, Michael Tin, Andrew Lam, Ben Chan, Lo Wai Kwok. 20 members altogether. I'll give each member 4 minutes questions and answers. Please be succinct. Now, if you want to express your view, that's fine, but there may not be time for the administration to respond to your comments, so you have to wait for a next round if possible. Mr. Dominic Lee. Thank you, Chair. Well, the public coffers are under pressure. It's been 30 years since the tolls for Aberdeen Tunnel and Shing Mun Tunnel are adjusted, and they're now running into deficit. We appreciate the rationale for proposed toll adjustment, At the same time, has the government considered the economic situation? Will this pose a greater financial burden on the middle class? The second point is about the Central Kowloon bypass. The government earlier emphasized that it would be toll-free. Now there is an expectation shortfall here. Has the government considered the perception, especially since the economy is not that good and the government is under pressure? Will the government consider delaying the toll adjustment till later when the economy improves? The third point is this. I thank the Transport Department and the government for redistributing cross-harbour traffic. This is a very good policy. It improves people's livelihood. Well, now that our economy has improved, we're seeing more people and more traffic. Well, of course, this is good for Hong Kong, but then during peak hours, we see tailbacks at the cross-harbour tunnels again. And I believe in the long run, there will be additional pressure on the cross-harbour tunnels. So my question is whether the administration will consider building the fourth tunnel.
Two major questions from Mr. Dominic Lee. First, members of the public may find it a greater burden if you impose the tunnel tolls. So the first question is about whether you will adjust the tunnel tolls. And second question, whether there will be a fourth cross-harbour tunnel. Secretary. Now, on the question about the Aberdeen Tunnel, Mr. Dominic Lee was right. It's been 34 years since we last adjusted the tolls. So we are conducting a review this time around from the perspective of traffic management. We came up with different toll scenarios. And we want to be able to recover cost, and we don't want to have any adverse impact on traffic management. We also take into consideration people's affordability. It's been 34 years since we last adjusted the toll. Compared to inflation, we propose adjusting upward the tolls by $3. We think that this is a reasonable upward adjustment. On the point about Central Kowloon bypass, we need to implement traffic management measures. We need dynamic measures. Apart from looking at the financial position, we also look at the traffic conditions. So we're not going to stick to the same toll levels forever. We will flexibly adjust the tolls upward or downward where necessary. Now, I'd like to thank members for recognizing our effort in trying to divert traffic among the three road harbour crossings. By implementing time-varying tolls, we have been able to divert traffic effectively. We see that there's been a higher traffic flow on the roads in general. So we do want to, during peak hours, suppress and divert road traffic. As to whether there's a need to build a fourth road harbour crossing, from the perspectives of building infrastructure and having railway services, we will conduct a review. Building a new road harbour crossing will involve a very high cost, so we'll have to consider everything and strike a balance. Mr. Bill Tang, I'd like to first thank the government. During COVID, it was able to, despite challenges, finish an international project. It was able to meet all the safety standards. Back then, we had the opposition camp filibuster, and the project was delayed for 2 years. Now, coming back to this topic today, we have so many tunnels. And how should we charge tolls for different tunnels? And there are 4 major principles according to the government. I hope that there is one more principle, that is to enhance people's sense of well-being and gain. Well, you're suddenly saying that you want to charge tolls on the Central Kowloon bypass, and this is very disappointing with poor economic condition. We can't rule out the possibility that many people would choose not to use the Central Kowloon bypass because of the $10 toll. I have a very concrete suggestion. There is a Gun Tong bypass in Kowloon Bay. I think the Yau Ma Tei tunnel section is the most critical section of the entire bypass. My suggestion is this. We should not be so eager to set the toll levels now. We should wait until the bypass is commissioned by the end of this year to decide on the toll level. Secondly, if we are to really make a decision, should we charge a toll of $8 for Eagle's Nest Tunnel as well as the Route 8? It's also $8. $10 may be unacceptable to many. If you can't make it $8, can you wait until you have reviewed all the toll levels for all other tunnels? Then you impose the $10 charge? This is my question. Secretary, I thank Mr. Tang for the concrete suggestions, people's sense of gain and well-being is something that we want to ensure and achieve when we try to manage our traffic system. Apart from taking into consideration people's affordability, we have to be prudent. We have to look at our data as we try to manage our traffic. If we can alleviate the burden on the major trunk roads, by building a new tunnel, we will consider this option, but we see that there will be a growth in traffic flow because of different economic activities. So we are foreseeing challenges when we commission the Central Kowloon bypass. So we have already considered people's sense of gain and well-being. We have also considered the resilience of this piece of infrastructure. We want to provide convenience, but at the same time, we want to be prepared for additional traffic flow. So we need to strike a balance here. Mr. Tang mentioned that we could impose a $8 toll. We have done some preliminary review. The capacity under the $8 scenario will not be as good as the $10 one. Also, the efficiency will drop from 90% to 70%. Of course, people's usage is the most important. If we simply charge tolls without considering the usage, it will not serve the purpose. So we want to adopt a reasonable and compassionate approach. Mr. Michael Luke. Now I'd like to talk about the 3 road harbor crossings first. We all agree that we have seen great diversion effect. What is regrettable, however, is that the trade has found the $50 toll for minibuses unacceptable. For non-scheduled light bus or the red minibus, they find it the toll stifling their survival room. The government earlier said that it might adjust the toll downward to ensure the trade's competitiveness. However, this time around, the government said the current situation is good enough that it will not further adjust the tolls. So this is disappointing. What is the reason behind for the government not adjusting downward the tolls for red minibuses? Is it because you are afraid that there will be a lot more minibuses using the tunnel? Or do you think that the red minibus drivers do not actually care about the tolls? Now, coming back to the Central Kowloon bypass, well, the public expected that it would be a toll-free bypass. It would be great if it is toll-free. Now, just now, Mr. Bill Tang suggested an $8 toll instead of a $10 toll. You said that if it is toll-free, the VC ratio, it will reach 0.97, and if you charge a $10 toll, the VC ratio will be 0.8. Can you do another market research? Can you come up with some math model to come up with a more precise VC ratio to make the toll level look more reasonable? Let's say you really impose the toll, and for those who drive private cars, they might be the middle class and they are more financially capable. They may be able to accept the tolls. But for commercial vehicles, the drivers, they are using commercial vehicles for their jobs. So we'll be able to lower the tolls for commercial vehicles. Now, on the operation of all the tunnels, the operating cost compared to the income, well, we've got $1.35 billion. Well, for the Thailand tunnel, we've got an income of $300 million. So we have a surplus in terms of operating cost per year at $1.7 billion. So I think the administration should be prudent in charging tolls. I think the administration touched on the Central Kowloon bypass, but Mr. Look asked about whether there could be another market research and whether the toll could be lowered for commercial vehicles. Secretary. Now, on the diversion effect, I will ask the Commissioner to supplement. On the point about Central Kowloon bypass, I mentioned about how we can strike a balance. To respond to your point about commercial vehicles, we have come up with a scenario that is a $10 fixed toll scenario. There won't be additional charges during peak hours under this proposal. We have had a discussion about the tolls charged on the Thailand tunnel. I remember that we wanted to better manage traffic, so there won't be an additional charge during peak hours, even for private cars at the Thailand tunnel. So same for commercial vehicles. There is a all-day uniform toll, and that's why we are adopting a similar straightforward proposal for Central Kowloon bypass. Now, on whether there will be an survey on people's affordability, well, under our model, we have taken into consideration traffic flow as well as people's journey, including their starting point as well as end point. We also have considered the changing commuting habits, and we have accumulated years of data as we apply them to our traffic model. So we have taken into consideration people's wish as well as their changing commuting habits when we came up with the proposal. Now I'd like to invite the Commissioner to tell you more. Commissioner, when we set the tolls for the 3 road harbor crossings, we adopted the efficiency first principle for commercial vehicles, and that's why we imposed an all-day uniform toll of $50 for all commercial vehicles using the cross-harbor tunnels. Now it's been a year since we implemented the time-varying tolls. We have assessed the effectiveness. We noticed that starting from Q4 2024, the overall cross-harbor traffic was on the rise. So under the toll charging scheme, we see that we have achieved good diversion effect. However, we still have to be careful in monitoring the trend. We see that around 2024 and as well as early 2025, the traffic flow still exceeded the total capacity. We are actually seeing a rising trend even, so we have to be more prudent. We therefore propose to keep the existing toll levels.
Next, Mr. Chen Pui-Leung. Thank you, Chairman. The first question is about Aberdeen Tunnel. According to the paper, by 2027-2028, the expenditure will go up to $142 million. And yet in 2024-25, the deficit recorded was $18 million. So in just the period of 2 or 3 years, the difference has gone up by almost 200%. So why is it that in just 2 years, when you estimate the expenditure in 2027, the figure would go up by would double? Can you explain the rationale? Now you propose to increase the toll to $8. In 2027, you will be able to recover costs in full and get a revenue of $15 million. So is it really necessary to raise the Aberdeen Tunnel tolls to $8 along with the tolls of Shing Mun Tunnel, because it has yet to reach capacity? It's just 0.7. The second question is about Central Kowloon Bypass. It's only fair that tolls are charged because of the huge investment in infrastructure. According to the paper, the incentives for using this bypass is that it's a shorter journey, so you can save fuel costs by $14. But now we have new energy vehicles, more and more electric cars plying the streets. So that means this fuel cost saving incentive will have a lesser effect with a wider use of EVs. So have you taken this into account in adjusting tolls in the future? Because there will be more new energy vehicles of different categories, including commercial and private vehicles. The last point is about Western Harbour Crossing. For Kowloon, for the Hong Kong portal of the tunnel, it will be widened. So I think the problem can be solved. But during peak hours, for the Kowloon bound traffic, the tailback, it could be as far as Wan Chai. So is there any plan to address traffic congestion there? Secretary. Right, I'll try to take this question on Aberdeen Tunnel tolls. There'll be a major system overhaul in the future, so the estimated expenditure has incorporated the cost. To answer what Mr. Chan asked, are we overcharging tolls in the future based on the estimated expenditure? Now, I just want to emphasize that we will keep in view the situation and adjust tolls. So we'll closely monitor the situation. The second point is about Central Kowloon Bypass. The member made a very good point about the incentive and the wider use of electric vehicles. For fuel-propelled conventional vehicles, indeed, drivers will be able to save costs on fuel, and that happens to individual motorists. But in terms of the macro model and analytic model, we will not take individual circumstances into account. This will not have impact on our model. The third point is about the Western Harbour Crossing. During evening peak hours, like Mr. Chan said, traffic tailback will go back all the way to the flyover and the Wan Chai bypass. Now, we have slip roads. The Transport Department on a regular basis review the arrangements, and I'll go back and ask the Transport Department to review the situation. Dr. Starity. Frankly, when it comes to adjusting tunnel tolls, it's always an unwelcoming proposal. So the Secretary explained the considerations for tunnel tolls. There are 4 major principles: traffic management needs, efficiency, public transport priority, as well as user pay principle. So according to the government, priority will be given to traffic management needs, especially the implications on the neighborhoods in the vicinity and other users. I think the administration should articulate their reasoning well to the public, because we spend public money on building roads and maintaining roads, and there is a question in the mind of the public as to whether tolls should be charged for using every road. The other point I'd like to make is about the Central Kowloon bypass. Now, at the early stage during the design of the bypass, I also took part in the process because it straddles my constituency. Now, frankly, the government told the public that it would be toll-free in the beginning, but now you propose to charge tolls at the level of $10, and that's quite expensive, in my view. Now, for the Tseung Kwan O Tunnel, in the beginning, you charged $3, and then it will become toll-free soon. Now, can you explain to the public why, for some tunnels, a relatively lower level is set in the beginning, such as $3, whereas for the Central Kowloon bypass, at the outset, $10 will be charged? Building tunnels and roads always come with a cost, so can you explain the rationale? Is it because of traffic management needs? About time-varying tolls? Now, Secretary, you mentioned that it's heavily congested during peak hours, but at other times, traffic is smooth. So, is it possible to introduce time-varying tolls for the sake of traffic management? The next part is about giving priority to public transport. Now, I'm concerned because Kai Tak Hospital will be commissioned soon, and we're concerned about the traffic arrangement. According to the administration, the message I get is that it will be convenient to go to that hospital. I haven't seen any assessments on traffic impacts after the commissioning of the hospital and the proposed tolls. Secretary, well, thank you, Dr. Lee, for the questions. Her observations are right. In terms of review of government tunnels and major roads, this is no easy task. Now, in the past, we did not explain our rationale well, and we do admit this. On this occasion, we want to redistribute cross-harbour traffic, and we also want to engage the public so as to explain to them our key principles and our guiding thoughts. But after all, when it comes to individual tunnels and roads, these are part of the infrastructure for public use. Now, specifically about Central Kowloon bypass. In the past, because of space constraints, we are not able to use the bypass for the purpose of traffic diversion. So in the past, we did not propose tolls for the bypass. Now we need to explain to the public. Central Kowloon bypass spans 8 kilometers in total, and 7 kilometers of which will form a tunnel, and that means we need other major infrastructure such as 3 ventilation buildings, lighting installations, etc. The maintenance costs comparing to other tunnels are on the high side. For the purpose of traffic management, we also need to make sure that operating costs are recovered. Now, on time varying tolls, according to our scenario analysis, we propose a fixed toll instead, or uniform toll instead of a peak hour toll. We don't want to split further and introduce different level of tolls for different categories of vehicles. Now, to answer Dr. Lee's question, especially for transport near Kai Tak, of course, there is always room for improvement. I understand that other facilities such as Kai Tak Hospital will be commissioned in the future and will continue to facilitate greater communication between members and the transport department so that we can further improve the public transport system. When Central Kowloon bypass is commissioned, we want to make sure that traffic congestion can be addressed and that we can divert traffic so as to meet the objective. Right, thank you, Chair. I'd like the administration to give us more information about public transport arrangements after the meeting. Right, next, Ms. Connie Lam. Thank you, Chair. About the review on tunnel tolls. Now, Secretary, I have this concern, especially about the Central Kowloon bypass toll. It has taken $58 billion to build the Central Kowloon bypass. One of the portals is a Chang Kwan O Lam Tin bypass, and we want a shorter route to the airport. We've been waiting for such a route for many years. The government never told us that a toll will be charged. According to the paper, now even if a toll of $10 is charged, the government will only be able to recover costs to the tune of $257 million. That means it's less than 25% of the operating cost. Is it just a notional toll if it cannot be financially sustainable? Because there will also be exemptions to support specific industries such as logistics and aviation industries. So that means it's not truly users pay. Taxpayers' money is used to subsidize specific industries. So is it really possible for Central Kowloon bypass to alleviate traffic congestion along Gaston Road? And will there be tolls charged for T4 in Sha Tin in the future? Can the Secretary give us a very clear picture about the tolls of various tunnels? Secretary, 3 questions. First, about the proposed $10 toll will be able to recoup 90% of the operating costs. According to the paper, we mentioned the 20%, but that's the amount including depreciation. So that's about accounting. Central Kowloon bypass is a new road, so the depreciation percentage will be on the high side during its early commissioning. In terms of operating costs, we'll be able to recover close to 90%. Now, Ms. Connie Lam also asked about the Lantau link at the during its early commissioning, tolls were charged. It later became toll-free. Now we review the arrangements for Lantau Link as well as Tuen Mun Chak Lap Kok Tunnel. These two form a route for direct access to the airport, as well as the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. We have commercial vehicles and vehicles for tourism, for logistics, etc. They generate economic value, and they're also efficient. So according to our paper, we need to go by the 4 key principles. From the perspective of traffic management, we are happy with the capacity and the VC along Lantau Link as well as Tuen Mun Chak Lap Kok Tunnel. The second point is about efficiency. Now, for operating costs as well as a user pay principle, we need to keep things flexible, and we need to approach the matter in a dynamic manner. Ms. Lam mentioned T4. T4 provides an expressway between Mangonshan and Xunwan. It can also help rationalize the tolls for traffic coming from new territories east to the various tunnels in the urban districts. So at this moment, it's very sensitive. We need to be cautious. We will be very cautious in considering tolls for T4, and we will, of course, engage the LegCo when we have any proposal.
Mr. Chao Xiu-chung, I, in principle, do not object the review of tunnel tolls by the government. However, I suggest that when the government reviews the toll levels, it should really prioritize the efficiency first principle as well as the traffic management principle. It should consider the public's affordability so that we can avoid any adverse impact on people's livelihood. Now I'm looking at paragraph 18. That is the 3 proposed scenarios on the Central Kowloon bypass. The first scenario, which is a toll-free scenario, I find it the most acceptable and reasonable, and it will achieve the greatest diversion effect. The VC ratio will be up to 0.97 under the toll-free scenario. As for the third scenario, the capacity will be down to 80%. That is, you don't want to make the full use of the Central Kowloon bypass, but then if that's the case, it will affect the overall diversion effect. Have you thought about the consequences? Also, have you thought about a $5 plan? If you charge a $5 toll, what will be the diversion effect, and will you be able to achieve a better cost recovery if you impose a $5 toll? Now, on the 3 road harbor crossings, I appreciate the diversion proposal from the government because we have achieved great result. However, I've all along been concerned about the tolls on commercial vehicles. I'd like to have the $50 tolls for commercial vehicles adjusted downward a little bit. This is the aspiration of the trade, and I hope the government can listen to their views. However, it seems like the government has ruled out this option. This is because, according to the government, there will be additional traffic flow if the toll is adjusted downward. For these 3 road harbor crossings, we do not have any alternatives. Say I come to LegCo for work. I can take the MTR or other public transports, but for commercial vehicles, they have no alternatives. If you charge a $50 toll, well, that means there will be more people ordering services from commercial vehicles. Will the government be able to provide us with data and show us how additional traffic flow will be induced if you charge a toll lower than $10? A couple of questions. The first about commercial vehicles, and secondly, why do you think a lowering of the toll will induce additional traffic? Secretary, I thank Mr. Chow for the questions. On the Central Kowloon bypass, we conducted some analysis on different scenarios. We have to be careful if we are to charge a $5 toll. I can share with you some data. If we charge a $5 toll, it is expected that during peak hours after the Central Kowloon bypass is opened, the capacity will reach 90%. That means it will be a situation similar to a toll-free scenario. Now, on the operating cost, it's about $300 million. If we charge a $5 toll, that means we'll be able to just recover 50% of the cost. So this is to give members an idea. Now, on the point about the 3 road harbor crossings, some members of this council in the previous discussion about our diversion proposal, they mentioned about commercial vehicles specifically. We share the same views because we both want to abide by the efficiency first principle as well as the traffic management principle. However, what matters is this. We have looked at the situation with the 3 road harbor crossings. Like the Commissioner said, we are seeing an overall increase in terms of the traffic flow. We have to be very careful and sensitive in terms of deploying traffic management measures in order to achieve the desirable diversion effect. We have taken into consideration of striking a balance among the WCH, the CHT, as well as the ECH when we imposed the $50 toll. If you still remember, for the West Harbour crossing, we already lowered the tolls for commercial vehicles to $50. One little change could have a huge impact. So to respond to Mr. Chow's question, it's not that we are going to keep the toll levels for commercial vehicles unchanged forever. It's just that after implementing the time-varying tolls for a year, we haven't seen enough data that gives us confidence to make further adjustments to the existing toll levels. If we adjust the toll levels now, we may be able to see undesirable results in terms of the diversion effect. Mr. Chang Hock Fong, the government is reviewing the tunnel tolls. I think there could be a more comprehensive review. The government mentioned about the 4 major principles, and I don't understand the logic and rationale behind the government's considerations. For some tunnels, you adopt the traffic management principle, and for others, you adopt the efficiency first tunnel. And for some of the tunnels, you abide by the users pays principle. Now, should these 4 major principles be applied to all tunnels and major trunk roads? It's not that you adopt certain standards for some tunnels and other standards for other tunnels. For the 3 road harbor crossings, you prioritize traffic management needs. And for Aberdeen Tunnel as well as Shingmun Tunnel, you prioritize the user pays principle. Can you adopt the same 4 major principles for all tunnels and major trunk roads when you do the review? This will give us a better grasp of what kind of standards the government is applying when reviewing the tolls. Many people asked me, how come user pays principle is adopted to one tunnel but not the other tunnel? And I could not give an answer. My other question is this. According to the paper, the Aberdeen Tunnel is suffering a loss. That's why the toll needs to be adjusted upward. However, for some tunnels or trunk roads, you could lower the tolls. Is it that you have already lowered the operating cost for all 19 tunnels and trunk roads? If you have already done that and still you think that there is a need to adjust the toll levels upward, then I would accept it. Now, after the news come out about the adjustment of tunnel tolls, I was told by some minibus drivers as well as bus companies that there might be a chance that the bus fares or minibus fares will go up. It will also affect the route arrangement. As we know, there will be a major bus route restructuring. by bus companies, and if you increase the toll, it will affect the operation of bus companies. Well, the adjustment may be minimal because take the Aberdeen Tunnel as an example, it is just a $3 increase, but it could have a huge impact on people's livelihood. So I do hope that the Secretary will look at it in a more holistic manner. Apart from looking at the operation of individual tunnels, you should also consider people's livelihood. The first question is about the four major principles. Because of the different backgrounds of the different tunnels, certain principles are prioritized. That's the first question. Secretary, I actually thought about the question raised by Mr. Chan Hofung last night. I'm not going to repeat the four major principles here. I think we have already laid down our considerations behind the four major principles in the paper. Mr. Chan's question is how we apply the different principles as we review the tolls. Let me explain it this way. I hope both the government as well as members of this council can help explain the reasons behind the proposal so it will be more acceptable for the public. First, on applying the four major principles, I think we need to look at the details. For example, we should not just try to achieve user pays principle and neglect traffic management. Otherwise, we will suffer. And from the perspective of traffic management, we have to see whether we can recover cost. But we should not only consider this. If we, however, do not recover cost, we will not be able to break even. Thirdly, again from the perspective of traffic management, during peak hours we may have to impose a different toll level. However, we still have to consider the efficiency first principle. Therefore, for public transports as well as commercial vehicles, there are no time varying tolls. Instead, we impose an all-day uniform toll or a fixed toll for these vehicles. This is exactly because we do not want to compromise efficiency because of traffic management. Now, on the point about the impact on public transports, now we are proposing a $3 increase on the toll, and we have looked at the cumulative inflation rate over the past 34 years. I understand that people will take time to adapt to the new toll levels. However, if you look at the cumulative inflation rate, you cannot say that this increase is too high. Now, on the impacts on public transports, including buses as well as minibuses, the Transport Department is currently working with district stakeholders as well as the relevant operators. We have implemented the HKE toll on the Aberdeen Tunnel, and we have been able to release certain land. And this can help increase or enhance bus services. I believe that bus companies or minibus companies, when they consider the bus fares, they would take into consideration the toll levels as well as the fuel cost. We understand that the minibus trade would like to have efficiency enhanced while we review the toll. Now, Mr. Chen said it seems that the operating cost may be higher than the toll level. Or the income higher than the operating cost. We have to look at this carefully. Take Sha Tin as an example. The cost may be higher, the toll may be higher than the operating cost. And for others, the operating cost may be higher than the income. So we have to be very careful and adjust the toll levels in due course.
Mr. Vincent Chang. Thank you, Chairman. I'm concerned about Central Kowloon Bypass. In 2017-18, in the previous term of government, I was also engaged in the construction of Central Kowloon Bypass. There were major changes at the district level, such as Yau Ma Tei parking spaces were taken away, some structures were taken down. There were complaints from residents. We wanted to shorten the construction time, and we were told back then that the journey time would be greatly shortened for vehicles traveling from Kai Tak to Yau Ma Tei, but there was no mentioning of tolls. Now, one of the reasons for reprovisioning the Queen Elizabeth Hospital was that Kai Tak Hospital will be commissioned soon, so we did not expect tolls for Central Kowloon Bypass. So I echo with what Dr. Sari Lee said. The government should consider lowering the tolls from $10. That is on the high side. The second point is this. On behalf of local residents, I'd like to raise this point. Now, Yau Ma Tei residents will be encouraged to use Kai Tak Hospital in the future. What about public transport arrangement? The paper is silent on what public transport is available for residents from Yau Ma Tei to travel to Kai Tak Hospital. Can you give us more information about arrangements available for local residents and how they can travel to Kai Tak Hospital? The other point is about parking spaces. I know that parking will be provided in the form of smart parking spaces or automated car parks in Central Kowloon, but the government should also address the issue of insufficient parking in Yau Chim Mong District. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chang, for the questions. You mentioned some district issues, such as parking spaces and arrangements to facilitate commuters. We understand fully the public's expectation, so Central Kowloon route will be commissioned in phases. Even if it's not fully commissioned, we will commission the Yau Ma Tei section first as soon as it's completed. And as I said in my opening remarks, we will have regard to the latest traffic assessment. We want to ease traffic congestion. At the same time, we want to make sure that the bypass is resilient enough against possible traffic congestion during peak hours, and this is exactly why we review tunnel tolls and propose tolls with a view to considering public affordability as well. Now, we'd like to take this opportunity to answer Mr. Chang's question about this automated car park, whether we can make use of the shaft built to build an automated cylindrical car park. Now, I've asked my team to give it a thought and explore options. All along Yau Ma Tei and Kowloon Bay, even towards West Kowloon Cultural District, whether it's possible to provide parking spaces and ensure smooth flow of traffic and people by providing pedestrian crossing. As for Kai Tak Hospital, perhaps like Dr. Lee earlier mentioned, we'll provide supplementary information later. Perhaps Ms. Lee can also address the issue on public transport. We have 4 franchise bus routes serving the Children's Hospital and Kai Tak Hospital at the moment. But like the member said, for Yau Ma Tei residents in particular, we're going to operate a new bus route. We're also going to extend the one of the existing bus routes to serve residents in Yau Ma Tei. We'll provide supplementary information after the meeting. Please do. Next, Mr. Edward Lau. Thank you, Chairman. I want to acknowledge the efforts made by the Transport Department and the Highways Department. It is not an easy task to build the Central Kowloon Bypass in a very complex built-up urban environment. The works themselves are complex. I hope works can be completed as soon as possible. The government mentioned 4 key principles. The users pay principle can be interpreted in different ways. When it comes to public roads, I think the first and foremost consideration is that the public should be able to use the roads for free. As part of the community facility. At the same time, I appreciate other arrangements such as tolls for the purpose of traffic management and rationalizing traffic flow during peak hours. And I also appreciate different priorities accorded to these principles. But on the whole, I think top priority is users pay, and that the general public should be able to use these roads for free. The other 3 principles should come after this first principle. My next point is this. You propose to adjust tolls for Aberdeen Tunnel. My concern is whether you will adjust tolls for other tunnels as the next step. The government should have regard to the current economic situation. We have some toll-free highways in Hong Kong. I want to make sure that they remain toll-free. My third point is this. As pointed out by other members, time-varying tolls should be introduced for Central Kowloon bypass as well. Perhaps not a toll structure as complicated as that for Tai Lam Tunnel. There should not be any differentiation among different vehicle classes, perhaps just peak or non-peak time slots for the purpose of inducing economic activities after 11 p.m. Perhaps no tolls should be charged. Basically, the tunnels have few traffic, so lifting tolls of all tunnels will encourage consumption and encourage, in particular, consumption at night. Secretary. Thank you. The member mentioned 3 points. I'm fully on board with the first one, especially for the 4 key principles. We do not give equal weighting to all the 4 principles for each and every tunnel because this is inflexible. We need to keep things flexible as mentioned in the paper, and that is why when we consider the tolls for different tunnel tolls, we apply different weightings to these key principles, but we share the same goal. And on a particular note, I'd like to offer a different view than what Mr. Lau said. The starting point of Mr. Lau's argument is that all roads and tunnels in Hong Kong should be toll-free. Now, I beg to differ, but of course, I don't wish to take up time at this meeting. We can have a further exchange in greater detail after the meeting. Now, about time-varying tolls for Central Kowloon bypass or other tunnels, well, it's a very complicated exercise. We need to analyze data and consider the purpose of traffic diversion at peak hours. We don't want to impose a very complicated toll structure that the public find difficult to understand. And that is why we propose in the paper a more feasible option that seeks to strike a balance. What about toll-free arrangements after 11 p.m.? Secretary. I think the same point arose when we discussed toll arrangements for Tai Nam Tunnel or other tunnels which have yet to reach full capacity. Now, we don't think this is a feasible option. Next, Dr. Low Wai Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I thank Deputy Chair Mr. Perry Yu for allowing me to go first. We press the button more or less at the same time. Many years ago, when we discussed tolls for Aberdeen Tunnel and other roads, I championed the Shanghai model in Hong Kong. What is meant by Shanghai model? I remember years ago, tolls were charged at bridges, and I remember we literally had to put money in a bucket, and the Shanghai municipal government has decided not to charge tolls for certain highways, and that motorists can choose the best routes that suit their needs using mobile apps, so it's convenient for everybody. So, according to this model, it's not an absolute users pay principle. Everyone had to pay for the use of roads and bridges. And I think this is not an infeasible option for Hong Kong. About the government's proposed toll adjustments for Aberdeen and Sheung Wan Tunnel, to raise the tolls from $5 to $8, I don't have strong views. As for the proposed $10 for Central Kowloon bypass, well, in the past, that was not possible because we did not have space to build a toll plaza. Now, with the commissioning of the HKE toll, tolling becomes a feasible option. I am a motorist. I don't think a $10 toll is an exorbitant sum. It's not beyond my affordability. I think the toll level is appropriate. Now, I'd like to raise another point. When I first raised this point in the past, the government officials reassured me. For uniform toll of $50 for commercial vehicles for the 3 harbour crossings, there is a big problem for smaller commercial vehicles. It's a great financial burden on them. There should be a differentiation between smaller and larger commercial vehicles. In fact, I received some views today via email. I was told in the past for vehicles crossing the harbour from Hong Shui Kiu, it would take $15 for a single trip and then $30 altogether. But now with a uniform toll of $50 per commercial vehicle, that means $100 in total. That means the monthly cost would go up from $900 to $3,000, and that really breaks the back of small operators. Now, of course, you can't give me a definite answer today. Can you just tell me whether you will review the situation sometime after the toll arrangements has been in place? Right, Secretary, please consider Dr. Low's comments. You don't need to answer all his questions. Let's see if you have any response. The last point about light goods vehicles, I remember very clearly what Dr. Low suggested, and during the resumption of second reading and the third reading in the Council, I categorically mentioned that we would review the situation, and now may not be an appropriate juncture, but we'll go back and consider your views. About the Shanghai experience, we considered that as well. This is a rather complex issue. That means, should we differentiate between the tolls for road use or tolls for vehicles in general? We need to strike a balance. Now, at this point, we consider the review. We conduct a review from the perspective of traffic management. Well, I went to Shanghai, and I traveled along a very long bridge called Donghai to Yangshan Pier. Tolls are charged for small vehicles and the lorries alike, and we'll continue to exchange views with other governments with a view to mapping out a very clear policy to benefit motorists as well as the public, so that they have a very clear grasp of our arrangements.
Mr. Frankie Yik. A number of members asked whether commercial vehicles could be exempted from the tolls at the Central Kowloon bypass. Well, I'm sure you have your own model. I hope that you can provide the relevant information after the meeting. Say, commercial vehicles are exempted from the toll, and what will the traffic flow forecast be? You can refer to your model. Secondly, I am quite disappointed that the tolls for commercial vehicles at the 3 road harbor crossings are not going to be lowered. This is because I was told that the transport and logistics trade has been going through a very tough time. Again, I'd like to seek information on this. We know that commercial vehicles, they will not cross the harbor tunnel if they're not doing it for their jobs. I want to know what will be the consequences if you lower the tolls to $40 or $30 for commercial vehicles at the 3 road harbor crossings. Can Secretary provide the relevant data after the meeting? No problem. We would like to have more exchange with members. Just now, Mr. Chao Xiu-chung, Mr. Frankie Yik, as well as Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, mentioned about the same point, and we will look at this carefully. Our assessment is that this is not an appropriate time for us to lower the toll for commercial vehicles, but we will continue to monitor the situation. Next, Mr. Kenneth Lau. Thank you, Chairman. For Shengmun Tunnel, Aberdeen Tunnel, the toll will be increased for the first time in some 30 years, and this is to catch up with the inflation. I think this is acceptable for the public. As for the Central Kowloon route, at the beginning, the government said it would be a toll-free bypass, but now the government has changed its mind. I hope the government can explain to the public and explain why the toll level suggested is reasonable. The government is suffering from a serious fiscal deficit. We have to weather the storm together. But at the same time, our citizens are seeing greater burden amidst of the sluggish economy. Will the government consider lowering or even exempting the tolls for all these tunnels when the fiscal position improves, so that it can share the economic benefits with the public? Also, will Longcheng Road be repaved after the commissioning of the Central Kowloon bypass? Will you take into consideration the capacity of the relevant roads? And during the pavement works, it is inevitable for public to use other roads for east-west travel in Kowloon. Will the government then consider lowering the tolls on Central Kowloon bypass to reduce people's traveling expenses? Secretary, I will respond to the questions about the toll adjustment and on repaving Longcheng Road, I will defer it to the Highways Department. Mr. Lau asked about the toll adjustment. We have taken into consideration the 4 major principles when we review the tolls. We also want to recover the cost. Of course, after we have implemented the new toll levels, we will continue to monitor the situation. We will monitor the traffic management situation. We will also have to take into account the cost recovery situation. It may not be appropriate for the government to look at each tunnel or each set of roads in a micro level. However, we will continue to apply the user pays principle as well as the cost recovery principle when we set the toll levels. Well, member asked whether the tolls will be lowered when the government's financial position improves. Are you saying that you will consider the 4 major principles before you make a decision? Correct. Highways Department, Mr. Low. On the question about repaving Longcheng Road, for concrete roads, we are repaving them with a type of asphalt materials in phases. This is to improve the road surface. After the commissioning of the Central Kowloon Bypass, Yamate Tunnel section, we will review the situation. We will implement a pilot scheme. We will pick a road section with relatively lower traffic flow and use it as a pilot for the repaving works. We will also implement temporary traffic measures. If the repaving goes well, we will implement the construction works in full. Mr. Gary Zhang, because of various reasons, we have different toll levels and different principles behind for the different tunnels in Hong Kong. So there has been some inconsistencies. It's been difficult for the government to set a toll level or even take back some of the tunnels. This is because there is no absolutely right or wrong scenario. So we have to look at the tunnels in Hong Kong as a whole to review the toll levels, and the review is worth it given the current fiscal position of the government. Even with some principles in mind, it's impossible for toll levels to be adjusted for all tunnels. So I want to show my understanding for the government, because we need to reach a consensus when we come up with a certain toll level. Now, I think we have to first think about whether we should charge tolls at all from the economic perspective. Just by building new roads will not solve the problems. This is reflected in the examples on the mainland or in other places. If we look at this scientifically, by building new roads will not solve congestion problems. We have to resolve the problem through management. And from the examples of the 3 road harbor crossings, we see that we can divert traffic through management. So we have to do this in advance. We shouldn't wait until the VC ratio reaches 1.1 or 1.2 to implement better traffic management. I have some suggestions. On recovering cost, I think we have to first consider the operating cost. We should not take into consideration the depreciation. This is because it is a fixed investment in infrastructure. What is crucial is that we can recover the operating cost. I think this is a more reasonable and realistic approach. This is because we cannot, by charging tolls, recover the construction cost. That's my first point. Secondly, on recovering operating costs, we should not look at the tunnels one by one. We should look at the additional operating cost of all tunnels compared to managing roads in general. And after we've looked into that, we can then consider the traffic flow during peak hours, and then we can decide whether to implement time varying tolls to control traffic flow. I think we should look at the above factors to make any proposals more logical and easily comprehensible. If you simply try to break even for some tunnels or for some tunnel users, this may not be fair. We should look at the additional cost for operating all tunnels in Hong Kong when we try to recover the operating costs. Secretary, should we look at all tunnels together when we try to decide how to recover the operating cost? I appreciate the comment provided by Mr. John, and that we should look at the operating cost. Take the Central Kowloon bypass as an example. We're not trying to recover the full cost. We have included the depreciation, but we are also taking into consideration the cost of operating the bypass. We have the different principles, and we apply these principles to the different tunnels. We look at people's adaptability. Take the Central Kowloon bypass as an example. We want to recover the operating cost, but in future, we want to, for example, apply the build, operate, and transfer model to certain sets of tunnels. But this will take time, so we will do this step by step. Thank you. Mr. Kitson Young. Thank you. I'd like to focus on the Central Kowloon route. I saw the growth of the Central Kowloon route because I am a member representing Kowloon City. Near Chuen Lung Bay, we have the whole pier reclaimed. And in Ho Man Tin, there were works on the ventilation shafts. We have been trying to explain to local residents that with the Central Kowloon route, it will ease the congestion on Gascoigne Road. And the government told us that it would be a toll-free route. That's how we explained to local residents about the Central Kowloon route. Now you are telling us that you want to recover cost and charge tolls. That's not a problem, but should it be $10? I don't agree to your explanation. If you go back to your slide about alternative routes, 15 kilometers through Gascoigne Road, no traffic light. Through 12 kilometers on Central Kowloon bypass, again, no traffic light. From Cheung Kwan O through Kwun Tong bypass to Central Kowloon bypass, it only takes about 2 to 3 minutes. And the difference in journey time if people use Gascoigne Road, it's not a huge difference. It's like 1 to 2 minute difference. Would people spend $10 to take the Central Kowloon bypass? If I spend $10 and if the journey time is greatly reduced, I wouldn't mind paying the $10. So I agreed with Mr. Bill Tang. The purpose of having this Central Kowloon bypass is for people to use it. If that's our objective, we should think about whether the toll level would encourage people to use it. If we are to resolve the congestion problem, well, you can consider charging $10 during peak hours. That's not a problem. If there is no congestion during non-peak hours, why would people spend $10 to use the Central Kowloon bypass? Would you consider lowering the toll to $5 during non-peak time slots? I think this is a reasonable approach, and I think people would be willing to, during non-peak hours, use the Central Kowloon bypass if the toll is cheap. That will serve the purpose of having the Central Kowloon bypass.
Now there are two sections. One is T2, the other is Central Kowloon Route. Altogether, it's called Central Kowloon Bypass. We have entrances and exits in between. So instead of charging tolls for the whole section, you can have sectional tolls and half the tolls. So give it a thought. Otherwise, I don't think it's reasonable. The Secretary mentioned time-varying tolls being a very complicated arrangement. I don't think this is true. You can have $10 for peak hours, $8 for non-peak hours, or $4. You don't need to differentiate the commercial vehicles from non-vehicle ones. I think this is acceptable for all, and it is also a way to recover costs. So I fully agree with what Mr. Gary Zhang said, that you should not include depreciation in your calculation. Instead, you should just go by the operating costs. You should consider public affordability and the promise you gave to the public. Secretary. Thank you. The views are noted. We're here to explain our analysis and the various scenarios to members today. I welcome all the views. Thank you. Mr. Lau Meng Kwang. Picking up on what Mr. Gary Zhang and Mr. Lau Meng Kwang and Mr. Kisan Yang said, I'd like to say the following. We need to reflect the views of residents heavily affected by the Central Kowloon Route project, because as soon as they heard that $10 would be charged, their views are that rather than charging just $10, you should charge more, because by then there'll be fewer traffic, and that it will be beneficial for the whole community, because they've been affected by the major works, such as those living in Prosperous Garden. And there are also views as to whether we must build the Central Kowloon Route. The government promised to erect noise barriers, etc. In the end, the neighborhood compromised because the government said no toll would be charged. So they put their personal interests aside and supported the government. Now, after enduring the noise nuisance for years, if the government cannot achieve traffic diversion along Central Kowloon bypass, then the residents suffered for no reason. The government should consider the community sentiment as well. I think this is a very important factor in considering the options. Now back to my point, residents have shown great understanding of the government situation. In the future, the government should broaden the scenarios in the analysis. The government has provided 3 scenarios: toll-free, $10, $17. More information should be provided in how you analyze the scenarios, including the impact on traffic flow as well as the impact on other roads. What about other options such as $5 and $8? The other point is about time varying tolls. Is it possible to charge a uniform toll and then a top-up toll during peak hours for the purpose of adjusting vehicle traffic flow? Don't just give us 3 options and 3 scenarios, take it or leave it. You need to explain your options to gain acceptance among the community as well as motorists. Secretary. Right, Mr. Leung's comment is heard loud and clear. He just relayed the views of local residents, and just as I said when I answered Mr. Yeung's question, this is an opportunity for members to give us your views today, and we note the members' views. I think we share the same goal. The purpose is to manage traffic, and we need to bear in mind that this bypass straddles different districts. It doesn't just serve a local community. We need to have regard to the demands of other users and motorists, and that is why we seek to strike a balance and offer different scenarios for members' consideration. Before I allow another member to continue with the Q&A session, I'd like to first make a suggestion for the purpose of time management. 5 members are waiting to speak for their first round. We are supposed to adjourn the meeting at 12:45. Now I'd like to extend the meeting by 15 minutes so that all members can have a go on the topic of review of tunnel tolls, so that members can put questions to the Secretary and exchange views. Now, as I mentioned early on, we do have another item for today's meeting. So let's see what members think. I will extend the meeting by 15 minutes to wrap up this item. As for the next item, implementation of smart mobility initiatives, we will deal with that at the next meeting. All agree? Right, next, Mr. Michael Tian. The round table has been making the same point for more than a decade. It's the government's responsibility to build roads, bridges, and other infrastructure. That's the purpose of charging citizens taxes. You charge taxes in order to provide free roads and bridges. So I support the government in introducing a very simple principle, and that we should take away depreciation and try to go by the users pay principle as much as possible. We should consider only the operating costs. Now for the tunnel tolls, there is a lack of a standard approach. For some tolls, the government is able to generate revenue, but not for other tunnel tolls. Well, that's the cause of social grievances. Now, the government proposes to charge $10 for the Central Kowloon bypass. That's roughly 80% of the operating cost. I believe a definitive benchmark should be laid down using the 4 key principles as a reference. In short, we should start with a toll-free arrangement and then take a progressive approach in introducing tolls to recover up to, say, 80% of the operating cost. It should not be introduced for the purpose of making a profit. Now, say for Central Wan Chai bypass, likewise, $120 million of operating costs should be recovered. As mentioned in this paper, well, according to the number of vehicle trips, you should just charge $6. But of course, the supercomputer will not agree. So my question is, exactly how much should be charged in order to recover $120 million on the premise that there will not be induced traffic congestion along Gloucester Road, so that the VC will not go up to 2 or even 3. I think that the situation is similar here. It takes some $40 billion for construction and maintenance. For Aberdeen Tunnel, it has incurred a loss of $20 million. It's too aggressive to raise the tolls to $8. Will you consider lowering the proposed toll to $6? As for the profit-making tunnels, I am against the adjustment. For non-peak hours, you should substantially lower the tolls. The other problem that complicates the matter is that for Thailand Tunnel, you get a profit of $300 million. For non-peak hours, there should be a substantial toll concession because the VC is so low. So based on the above, I think you should charge the level of tolls in order to recover costs, and that's it. I haven't heard a clear explanation from the government over the years. If you charge $5 or $6, you can recover 80% of the operating costs, but that would induce traffic congestion along the alternative routes. So perhaps you'd like to explain the principles. Mr. Tian, you've used up the 4 minutes of speaking time. Perhaps, Secretary, you may choose to answer just one of the points made. Now, Mr. Tian mentioned Central Wan Chai bypass, and I'd like to say a few words in response. The Central Wan Chai bypass is an express bypass that straddles different districts. So in terms of its function, it's similar to that of Central Kowloon bypass. We conducted a comprehensive review. For alternative routes to Central Wan Chai bypass, the situation is different from the Central Kowloon bypass because the only alternative is Gloucester Road, is one of the main roads in Hong Kong. Now, there may be other suggestions such as the Queen's Road East, but it's not a major road or a trunk road. Since its commissioning, the VC of Central Wan Chai bypass is just 0.5. So there is spare capacity since it's toll-free. Now we need to be very careful when we consider tolls. The impact on the only alternative, that is Gloucester Road. It is sensitive. If we compare the VCs, you see that it is not easy that we're able to achieve the traffic conditions we see today in Gloucester Road. Traffic is relatively smoother because of redistribution of cross-harbour traffic. There is now room to rationalize traffic flow on the island side, but we do have some important traffic notes that we need to be very careful about. So to respond to what Mr. Michael Tian said, when we consider these principles, there is no perfect solution. We need to be very careful, especially when some of the roads or tunnels were toll-free in the beginning. We need to be very careful about the overall traffic impact on Hong Kong Island. I note Mr. Michael Tian's view, but at this point I don't think it is an appropriate juncture to impose tolls on Central Wan Chai bypass. We will regularly review the situation. Thank you, Secretary. We have 5 more members waiting to speak. 4 of them will speak for the first time. Mr. Michael Tan would like to have a second round. And Mr. Now I'm going to draw a line. I don't know whether there is time for Mr. Michael Tan or other members to speak for the second time. So let's allow those who have not spoken to have a go first. Mr. Andrew Lam, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. For all the districts, I think it is necessary to introduce tolls for the purpose of traffic management. So that's my position. However, every time when a proposal is floated to impose tolls on a road or on a tunnel, we always have a painful discussion because we don't have the full picture. Now, every time you mention different sections of the road, such as the comparison just made between Central Wan Chai Bypass and Central Kowloon Bypass and their alternatives, such as Gloucester Road and Gascoigne Road, we still don't have the full picture. That is why when we try to explain to the public and stakeholders the proposal, it becomes very difficult because we don't know what the overarching principle is. I can't tell because I am not given the full picture or the whole analysis whether $10 is an acceptable level or $100. Now, Secretary just now repeatedly mentioned that it's a sensitive issue and we need to give consideration to the specific issues. Still, I envisage more and more disputes arising from these toll proposals. So I look forward to a comprehensive arrangement for all the 19 tunnels and the respective tolls so that we have a basis to work on, so that we're able to compare tolls and the relevant traffic arrangements. Now, if we're given the full picture, we can then look at the accounts in general. I'm not going to compare, for example, whether some tunnels are generating profit or not. Now, say, for example, the principle of users pay principle. You need to articulate this principle well so as not to generate panic in the public. I think you should avoid sending this message to the public that you're going to recover the cost in full under the users pay principle. So I do look forward to seeing the whole picture.
This is a comment from Mr. Andrew Lam. Well, there is a question about what is the overarching principle as well, Secretary. Now, in the past, we've had discussions about reviewing the toll levels for the different tunnels. I've kept the questions in mind, and when I review the tolls with my team, I bear in mind that we need to have an overarching principle. There are different types of tunnels, and the situations with the different tunnels are different. We want to have a comprehensive proposal, but whether it meets the targets or goals of each member, I am not sure. However, we do take into consideration the public's affordability as well as the district stakeholders' views. So we want to have a holistic consideration and we want to be reasonable and compassionate. Mr. Ben Chen. Well, there was a drop of tolls in the Thailand tunnel, but bus fares never drop. So I hope the government will ask bus operators to lower their fares. Now, the government is proposing a $3 increase for tunnel tolls. Take a 19-seater minibus, that means each passenger will have to pay $1.5 more. I think public transport operators will take the chance to increase the fares. I think at the end of the day, not just private car drivers will have to pay more, but all public transport passengers will have to pay more. So the review of tolls will have an impact on all citizens who take public transports. Now, if the Central Kowloon bypass is to charge tolls, it will definitely affect the effect of traffic diversion. So I'd like the government to consider this. Say we are charging tolls at the Central Kowloon route. I think we have to adopt a more conservative approach because we do not know what passengers will do after the charging of tolls. I think $10 is a very high starting point. You have come up with the three scenarios: toll-free, $10, and $17. Can you come up with more scenarios to see what the trend will be if you charge different tolls? Well, if you charge a few more dollars, will the VC ratio be lowered? And if you lower the charge, will more people be willing to use the Kowloon Central bypass? I hope that we can come up with a proposal that is acceptable to the majority of members here. Secondly, a number of members are proposing to turn some of the toll-free tunnels into tolled tunnels. I think with the current economic situation, members of the public would like to have a break on toll charges. So I hope that if this proposal is passed, please do not further raise the tolls of other tunnels within the near future. I have a third question. I'd like to talk about the operating cost of tunnels. For the Central Kowloon route, every year the operating cost is $1.17 billion. That's about $90 million per month. This is a stunning cost. For the first section, 4.7 kilometers. That's similar to the Central Wan Chai bypass because it's 4.5 kilometers in length. For the Central Kowloon bypass, the operating cost per year is $148 million, but the Central Kowloon route is $1.17 billion. The whole Central Kowloon route is 70 kilometers in length, and the yearly operating cost is $1.17 billion plus $50 million for implementing HKE toll. The total would be about $1.17 billion. Well, just now it was mentioned that depreciation was taken into consideration for $1.12 billion. The operating cost per year is about $300 million. That's why I think we should not take into consideration the depreciation of assets. And then you tell us that it costs a lot to operate the tunnels, and no matter how much you charge, you will not be able to recover the cost. This is unreasonable. Well, the normal operating cost is about $300 million, and if you charge $3 more, you're only recovering about 80% of the cost, according to the government. So, is there room to further reduce the toll, and should the government try to save up money as much as possible in terms of the operation? So there are two major questions from Mr. Chen, Secretary. One of the questions is about whether there is further room to further adjust the toll downward. Secretary. Well, Chairman made it very clear about the point of the operating cost, and I don't have anything to add. In terms of the different scenarios for the Central Kowloon bypass, well, I have heard members' views. I believe we all understand that we need to charge tolls from the perspective of traffic management because we want to be able to divert traffic and at the same time reserve capacity for traffic flow. So when we came up with the different scenarios, we want to achieve the goal of having 20% of the capacity for diverting traffic. After the opening up of the bypass, we hope that we can keep the 20% capacity as a buffer. We have listened to members' views. We will try to come up with different analysis or more scenarios. We will try to provide more detailed data. We will take all these into considerations before we introduce the subsidiary legislations to this council. We will look at the different scenarios, including the $10 scenario. We'll have to tread carefully, however. Any significant adjustment will affect the reserved capacity because after the opening up of the bypass, we may see a saturation. We also may not be able to recover costs if we significantly lower the toll, and this is not desirable. As for the toll levels for the 3 road harbor crossings and the other major trunk roads, we do not see a pressing need to further adjust the tolls for these tunnels. But it's not that we're keeping the toll levels forever. But at the current stage, we do not see the pressing need to adjust the tolls. A number of members mentioned that between 0 toll and $10 toll for the Central Kowloon bypass, there should be different scenario analysis. Will you provide an additional paper explaining about the different scenarios after the meeting, or will you take the time to listen to the views of the public before you make the decision or before you introduce the legislative amendments? Chairman, from the time management perspective, well, I think we'll need time to come up with more scenarios and come up with a more detailed analysis. We have heard members' views. We are working in full steam on the subsidiary legislations. We hope to give members an explanation about this when we introduce the subsidiary legislations. We have about 1 to 2 minutes left. Do members agree that I extend the meeting by another 15 minutes? We have 2 members who are waiting to speak for the first round. Mr. Perry Yu will go first, followed by Mr. Eric Yim. So I will extend the meeting by 15 minutes to deal with the other members' questions. As mentioned, the second agenda item about smart mobility will be carried forward to the next meeting.
Deputy Chair, Mr. Perry Yu. Thank you, Chairman. I've heard the government's explanation, and I appreciate that the government has strived to explain the 4 principles to members and how they have considered the 4 key principles in proposing the tolls. Now, I am on board with the idea of traffic management as one of the principles. But I have a question about Central Kowloon Bypass. Mr. Bill Tang suggested charging $8 instead, and the government should prepare a scenario analysis because this seems to be a more acceptable option. Now, I have been a member of I was a member of the Kwun Tong District Council more than a decade ago, and we really looked forward to the T2 and Central Kowloon bypass. Now that there is a repercussion because the government proposes charging tolls for the Central Kowloon bypass, the government should really consider the option of charging $8, like Mr. Gary Zhang said. For other tunnels, the tolls will be raised to $8 as well. So we have the same starting point. Even for motorcyclists, if they use the tunnel, they pay $8 as well. Now, using the $10 scenario, if it goes down to just $8, we're talking about a VC of 0.86 to 0.9. So I think this could be a feasible choice. Now, my question is this: is a technical one. Is about the exit near Kai Tak. I think the traffic is heavier on the western side, whereas on the eastern side from Kai Tak to Yau Tong, traffic should be less heavy. And now the toll charging point will be set at Kai Tak. Does it apply to both bounds of traffic? It's a technical question. I want to know whether you will set up some sensors on both sides. My next question is this. This bypass will connect both sides to Kai Tak new development area. It forms a major meridian and a transport corridor. Now we're concerned about connectivity to cruise terminal, Kai Tak Sports Park, West Kowloon Cultural District, and the airport. And my question is whether there is any plan on the part of the Transport Department to improve connectivity from these spots I mentioned to, say, the Express Rail Link station in WKCD or the airport. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Perry Yu, for the comments and the questions. About the technical point and the tolling arrangement, in fact, you'll find the details in the Assistant Commissioner's PowerPoint materials. As for other details, we will explain them in due course when we submit the legislative proposal. Now, the member also asked about transport arrangements for Kai Tak Sports Park and also the connectivity function of the Central Kowloon bypass. This will facilitate Tseung Kwan O residents to travel to West Kowloon, even to Lantau. So in terms of enhancing connectivity, we should ride on this opportunity to further optimize public transport arrangements, as well as pedestrian accessibility. Now, this is a good opportunity before the full commissioning of the Central Kowloon bypass. And meanwhile, we will continue to listen to members' views. Now, Mr. Yu asked a question about one of the scenarios and the analysis. We've noted the view. We'll go back and, in light of the chairman's request, we will come up with more scenarios in order to identify the feasible proposals for them to be included in the subsidiary legislation proposal in order to have member support. Next, Mr. Eric Lim. Thank you, Chairman. Now, I'd like to make 2 points. First, about redistributing cross-harbour traffic. After the legislative amendments and the time-varying tolls, we understand that traffic has been rationalized across 3 tunnels. During peak hours for EHC and CHT, traffic flow reduced by 10%. At the same time, for Western Harbour Crossing, traffic flow increased on average by 20%, especially during morning peak hours between half past 8 to half past 9. The commuting time increased by 20 minutes to half an hour. So I think you've reached the saturation point. The journey time cannot be shortened further. Now, will the administration consider reviewing the arrangement, especially during peak hours for Western Harbour Crossing in particular? Is it possible to raise tolls a bit? The second point is this. Well, there are other tunnels or highways that are currently toll-free. My take is that these highways or tunnels must offer shortened journey time alternatives to motorists in order for tolls to be charged, because the government should not charge tolls if the journey time gets longer afterwards. The government shouldn't even think about it. The HKE toll is a major initiative for this term of government. For the for the toll plazas, the tunnel booths are now being taken down, and there will be more space to improve traffic in the area. Now, my question is whether the e-toll will be can cover all tolled roads and tunnels. Secretary. Right, Mr. Eric Yim mentioned redistribution of traffic across the 3 cross-harbour tunnels. And during peak hours, we see adjustments. According to data, the traffic flow across the tunnels. Now, like Mr. Yim said, we should take a step further to divert traffic, especially during peak hours, using time-varying tolls as the means. And that tolls should be adjusted for this purpose. However, apart from the Western Harbour Crossing, we also need to consider the overall distribution of traffic at the CHT and EHC during peak hours. It's been just 1 year since implementation of the proposal. We will continue to keep in view the situation. We are also aware of the implications on traffic at other tunnels if we raise the tolls for one of the tunnels. As for commercial vehicles, we also note the views that we should lower tolls for commercial vehicles, and we will tread with caution. Now, about coverage of HKE toll, we took back Thailand Tunnel in the second half of, or in the end of May. Basically, all government tunnels are covered by HKE toll. Likewise, HKE toll will also cover the Central Kowloon bypass. We have other tunnels and trunk roads, and as mentioned in our paper, we don't want to rush into imposing tolls for these as well, because exactly like Mr. Yim said, if we introduce tolls and induce traffic congestion on the alternative routes or the routes themselves, we need to be very careful. So as mentioned, there are 3 toll-free tunnels at the moment, and we propose raising tolls for 2 of them. As for other tunnels, we do not plan to charge tolls. Now, we've just completed the first round. For all members who would like to speak, we have fewer than 5 minutes from the chairman of the meeting. I've drawn the line. Mr. Michael Tian has indicated a second round. So 4 minutes for Mr. Tian. Please be brief, just 2 minutes. Simply put, with technological advancements, you can introduce sectional tolls for all tunnels. As I said, the overarching principle is that you should not generate additional revenue from tolling. This will cause social conflict, because for Thailand Tunnel, you make a profit of 300 million. For Line Rock Tunnel, $120 million. During peak hours, your hands are tied, but during non-peak hours, tolls are not justified. During non-peak hours, you should substantially slash tolls to a level that will allow you to achieve fiscal balance only. So, Secretary, will you give it a thought? If not, I seek to be convinced. Well, thank you, Mr. Tian, for the questions. We introduced time-varying tolls for Thailand Tunnel. We have substantially lowered tolls across the board, and we've just implemented the arrangements. We need to be very careful about the assessment. Mr. Tian also mentioned the Line Rock Tunnel. As mentioned in the paper, Line Rock Tunnel forms part of the corridor from New Territories to the urban district. So there are implications on other sections as well. We'll continue to keep the matter in view. We will continue to listen to members' views. At the same time, we want to level with the public that after taking back Thailand Tunnel, we'll continue to maintain the current tolling arrangement. As for Line Rock Tunnel, we have no plan at this stage to adjust the tolls. Chairman, just allow me, I have great respect for you, and so far I've been convinced, but on this note, I am quite stubborn because you have no grounds. Right. Thank you, Secretary. Well, I feel that on the whole, members are in general in support of the 4 key principles mentioned, and members have expressed the acknowledgement of the government's analysis and consideration of these scenarios, but do go back and consider whether there is room to further adjust the tolls on the basis of the data collected. If possible, please come back and report your findings to us when you submit the legislative proposal. And please consider further lowering tolls for commercial vehicles. There are also suggestions, apart from lowering tolls for commercial vehicles, such as time-varying tolls. And please consider these suggestions and explain to us the reasons why they are not possible. And please go back and consider our views. So that wraps up our discussion.
呢個你可以留待。
Save it for next time. You can say this to the government next time. Next, AOB. Nothing under AOB. The meeting's adjourned. Thank you, members. Thank you, Secretary, and representatives from the Bureau and the Transport Department. Thank you.